It's time for Paleo Radio, only on Secular Media Network.
You are now entering Paleo Radio.
Welcome to Paleo Radio with your hosts Jeremiah Bannister and Joe Elder.
Hello, friends and neighbors listening on 95.3 FM, 1680 AM, WPRR Grand Rapids. My name is Joe Elder.
I'm the stallion stud horse, Jeremiah Bannister.
And this is Paleo Radio.
Yeah.
We've got quite a lineup for you guys tonight, don't we?
We have a bunch of great topics for you. It's going to be a complete blast, but it's going to blow by, so you're going to want to listen to the whole thing. It's going to go right, literally, blink of an eye.
In genuine fashion, it's how it always goes. We're going to lead in with Hillary Clinton and her connections to Wall Street and her asking us to name anything that's influenced her that Wall Street has ever done.
Yeah, imagine.
Yeah,
one thing.
It's going to be fun.
Maybe the clincher, one thing. The next one we're going to talk about is a piece by Susan Jacoby, and I've actually met her, had a picture with her, had dinner with her here in Grand Rapids with other great people. But she wrote a piece in the New York Times called Sick and Tired of God Bless America. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, that's going to be a very good one. Next, we're going to move to a Huffington Post article about conservatism versus libertarianism, and if they actually can work together or not. That's going to be a very interesting one to dive into.
It's an old debate, too, and it's a bunch of fun.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're going to wrap up the show with a discussion, maybe a little bit of debate as to whether Bill Maher lost any science credit at all by bringing on a controversial quack that claims that he has a cure for AIDS, and whether, and we have to play fair here, as to whether or not having someone on your show is a full-blown endorsement.
That's right. Well, I'd say he'd lose his science cred in the same way he loses his atheist cred by having anyone religious on the show.
Well, that's going to be the debate, so it's going to be awesome. But we're beginning here with a piece about Hillary Clinton, and I'll tell you, I watched the debate. It was fantastic, Joe.
Yeah.
The New Hampshire debate between Bernie and Hillary and everything that went on in between. It was a lot of fun just to watch, but she sat there and she said, name anything that Wall Street has influenced me on.
Anything.
Just anything at all. So there was an individual, I thought this was interesting, Human of Earth, over at dailycoast.com. So Human of Earth.
A little bit ominous, but that's cool.
A little bit, but took it up, right? Took up the challenge and said, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So it begins by saying this. It is wrong and unfair to attack or critique candidates on anything but substance, policy, or record. And Clinton's statements last night definitely fall underneath this umbrella. The following is not an unbridled attack against Clinton, but a response to a statement she made last night that went unanswered and should not have. While being questioned about her Wall Street ties, Clinton said to Anderson Cooper, who was moderating, quote, "But you know anybody who knows me thinks they can influence me. Name anything they've influenced me on. Just name one thing. I'm out here every day saying I'm going to shut them down. I'm going after them," end quote. But see, here's the context, though. You've got this whole debate and all of the campaign ads that have to do with Hillary's connection to Wall Street.
That's right.
You don't mention her, though, right? That was part of the drama that played out, was Bernie Sanders being asked, isn't this a negative ad? This talking about people receiving money from Wall Street for speeches, and that it's Goldman Sachs specifically.
In the tune of over, $600,000? That's crazy.
Ridiculous amounts of money.
That's buku munu.
So that was the context of this. So all this was swirling around, all around Hillary. And she had this thing, said, just name one thing. Now, also, just for context, we have to remember that her super PAC so far, right, and she's got one of those. That was part of Bernie's win tonight, because we record on Tuesdays. That's right. Part of Bernie's victory speech in New Hampshire was that he doesn't have super PACs. He's not going to have a super PAC, but she does receive nearly $15 million from Wall Street. Made $9 million to speaking fees in general. $9,680,000 in speaking fees in 2013.
Wow, $9 million in 2013 alone.
In 2013 alone,
$9 million.
Yeah, just gobs of money. And that during the debate, Hillary was asked about this and about the money that she received from Goldman Sachs, And Hillary's answer was, well, that's what they offered me, because Goldman Sachs offered her $225,000.
$225,000.
And he said, how do you what do you feel about that kind of thing? And she goes, well, that's what they offered.
But it turns out that that's just Hillary's minimum speaking fee. That's what it requires to get Hillary Clinton to speak is $225,000.
That is just an unbelievable amount of loot.
That's a lot of cash.
It's huge.
Thinking of just one other thing that she may have been connected with Wall Street on, this is just a little blurb from Politico. Clinton also has some history with the shadow banking world when she says she is continuing risk to the financial system. While in the Senate, she made a little-noticed overture to the Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson, who was involved in talks to rescue giant insurer AIG with government funds. She was calling on behalf of wealthy investors who stood to lose millions and had hired 2 longtime Clinton associates to represent them. So that's a little bit of a tie to Wall Street.
Yeah, she kind of hooked him up with some support.
Yeah, 2 longtime associates to represent them as well.
Right.
And calling on behalf of the wealthy investors. So,
right.
I mean, that's a pinch of a connection.
It's saying, yeah, these people, well, they have access to each other.
Totally.
Isn't that kind of the thing? I heard that. I forget who it was. I wish I remembered who it was who said that. It may have been Chuck Todd who said that it gives access, right? When these big organizations give politicians this much money, that there's not kind of an understanding between them after that. Right? that, hey, we hooked you up with literally $250,000 every time you opened up your yapper for 45 minutes. You really, and we did it numerous times, and you've literally made almost $10 million just off of speaking, right? Just to financial people. And the idea that you're not getting access, that the financial industry is not getting access through that, it's just completely nuts.
It is completely nuts.
Bonkertown. But it goes back. Look, here's another one. You got 2007. This is the article again. In 2007, while running for president, Clinton made campaign speeches attacking the tax break for hedge fund and private equity executives. Do you remember this? I do. I was excited about that. That was one of those things like, yeah, that's a really good thing. It says one of the infamous loopholes that allows rich people to pay way less in taxes than they're supposed to. Yeah, that'd be great. Shut that thing down, right? Get rid of that. Good idea. But did not sign her name onto legislation that would have ended the tax break and closed the loophole. That's one of those things that's like, a lot of people might say, hey, I ran for something and I didn't, once I was in, I was up against a really difficult battle. It's a different thing when that bill, right, it comes up, you don't even sign on to it at all.
Absolutely, yeah. Talking about supporting it, wanting to support it, and then not supporting it. I mean, it's hypocritical. That's all it is hypocritical. There's also a little blurb here. She said the brewing economic troubles weren't mainly the fault of big banks, not by a long shot, but added that they needed to shoulder responsibility for their role. While Wall Street may not have created the foreclosure crisis, it certainly had a hand in making things worse and, quote, needs to help us solve it. But basically, she's kind of turning a little bit of a corner here. She's acting like if it's dominoes, that Wall Street and big banks aren't the very first domino that led to all of the bad practice that was going on.
That everything else, if they tumble, and if they tumble, they're tumbling big.
Yes.
Right? The idea that that's not just going to have massive repercussions. The idea that culpability on a scale is like kind of balanced even for her between the people, right, and Wall Street. That it's kind of like, hey, listen, guys, if you put it on a scale, Main Street, Wall Street kind of comes even. Let's call it even Stevens and just move forward. No.
I wonder if they think about it like a war where they're like, yeah, we lost a few people and this is how it happens, but overall we made it and, hey, we're still fighting. I really think that that's kind of the mentality that they have.
The idea of saying one thing in private and doing another thing in public. That is, seriously, that is a real big problem.
That's almost her MO at this point, to be honest.
And she just happens to be running again in a really bad year for people who do that.
A really bad year.
It's the worst year you could even imagine in modern history. And by the way, folks, we're just getting this, about an hour ago, projections for both Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. Think about it. Let it settle in for a quick minute. Trump and Bernie Sanders win New Hampshire. and by big margins. And listen, on the Republican side, you got a lot of discontents underneath them that won too. Although establishment, listen, that was the night for them. Anyway, the idea is that there are so many, the outsiders, the narrative right now. It's the year of the outsider. It's this really rogue thing that's going on. And so for her to come in and act this way, it's literally the worst year for her to repeddle her goods.
Absolutely. And maybe we need to consider the fact that Hillary Clinton may not be that good at running for president. I mean, honestly, she lost to a first-term senator, and I know that it was a big sweeping thing, but it's either she has the worst timing ever, or she creates a vacuum where somebody else fills it with the energy that she can't provide. Because that's happened twice, and it's happening almost the same way.
I think it's because strategically they are banking kind of on the establishment. Like, they're banking on the idea that the establishment can always crank out the people that even if they lose certain states or whatever, that they're gonna sweep into your SEC states, you're gonna sweep into your Super Tuesday stuff, and you're gonna have a broader base of the United States. And especially in her case with African Americans. But dude, the idea, I mean, listen, she neck and neck tie, and I don't mean to go on this for so long, but seriously, a neck and neck tie in Iowa, and then going to New Hampshire and literally just getting hammered. And then tomorrow, Reverend Al Sharpton is going to be having a private meeting with Bernie Sanders. Yeah. Right? Private one-on-one with him. I mean, this is this is the year for that kind of thing.
And she had a 30-point lead just evaporate after Iowa. I mean, it literally just got sucked up. And I mean, that shows that this is a real deal. If you believe in Bernie, you better believe in Trump, and vice versa. If you think one isn't legit, you better think they both aren't legit. I mean, really, they are very, very similar in terms of the way that people are being motivated by anger to follow them and to want to get engaged in politics.
I'll tell you, that sums it up. It does. It sums it up hard. This is the year for it, folks. This is the year for Paleo Radio. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after these messages.
Love Paleo Radio? Join the club. Support our work by visiting patreon.com/Paleo Radio today.
Back to Eagle and Dragon.
We got a Spreaker comment, Joe.
A great Spreaker comment from Demise Avalon.
Demise Avalon wrote, "How do you get through such heavy issues in 50 minutes? It's magic.
Magic.
It's magical powers.
The magical gnomes do it in the microphone for us."
Well, listen, we have a special helper. We've got someone named Dennis. If you don't know who Dennis is, I think we've mentioned him. You got to go back. Listen, you got to binge listen to all the episodes and find out exactly the episodes where we explain who Dennis is. Or you can go on Facebook and check it out at facebook.com/PaleoRadio. I think we've got a couple images up there.
Oh, yeah.
With Dennis. And if we don't, I don't know what we're thinking.
Well, if not, then you can use your imagination and just think about what Dennis could be.
But we're so grateful for that comment. It was awesome.
Absolutely it was.
It was awesome.
We've got an article here from the New York Times. Sick and Tired of God Bless America. This is by Susan Jacoby.
I've met Susan Jacoby.
You were just saying, yeah, you've met Susan Jacoby. That is pretty cool.
She came and spoke at a CFI event. They have something on Wednesday nights where they have speakers come in. And she came to talk about her book, The Great Agnostic, Robert Ingersoll and American Free Thought. It was totally awesome. It was an awesome time. And then we went out to eat afterward. We had some Italian food, and it was a whole bunch of people. So it's not like I was sitting personally with her. But it was a fantastic time. And she's amazing. If you ever get a chance to see her, and check out her debate with Dinesh D'Souza. It's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And it happened at Fountain Street right here in Grand Rapids.
Oh, yeah. And Dinesh D'Souza sucks. So we all know that.
Yeah, we know he's the worst.
All right, now let's dive into the article. The population of non-religious Americans, including atheists, agnostics, and those who call themselves, quote, nothing in particular, stands at an all-time high this election year. Americans who say religion is not important in their lives and who do not belong to a religious group, according to Pew Research Center, have risen in numbers from an estimated 21 million in 2008 to more than 36 million now, which is a big jump.
That's huge.
That's huge. Despite the extraordinary swiftness and magnitude of this shift, our political campaigns are still conducted as if all potential voters are among the faithful. The presumption is that the candidates have everything to gain and nothing to lose by continuing their obsequious attitude towards Orthodox religion and ignoring the growing population of those who make up a more secular America.
Obsequious, that's the word of the day, folks.
Yeah, obsequious.
That's harder than people think.
Yeah, rolling it around in the middle, too.
Right,
Woo.
but think about this, and really just reflect, guys, as if all potential voters were among the faithful. It is offensive. I mean, if you go back and you look at it, you say, all right, Ted Cruz, Huckabee, right? I mean, these guys with Kim Davis or the sermons, the post-Iowa victory speech, Carson, he's all over that. Rubio, hardcore about it. Jeb, hardcore about it. They treat it as if literally this is still a Christian country in the same way that it kind of was with the Pilgrims. Sure. And we got to just treat it as if we're hedging in the group here. And it's like, man, we're pretty diverse, folks.
And we have to consider the fact that it's not something that only happens on the conservative side. Mm-hmm. I remember just last week I saw the video of Bernie Sanders talking about how his spirituality is what's really gauged him and helped him and guided him to make these decisions. He wouldn't be able to run for president without his spirituality. He was using a more vague term, but we have to be honest. Nobody runs as an all-and-out secular humanist or atheist to gain political office. I mean, it's just the way people feel about these terms, even though the numbers are growing, is still bad enough that it's a bad political move to make.
There's an excellent, actually, if you go to twitter.com/PaleoRadio Show, there's an excellent piece about a couple politicians who are running openly about the fact that it's lower level, local level
still though,
stuff.
That's
but
what
I
we
said,
need.
oh, totally, and I retweeted it. The piece is by Matthew Fasciani over at Pathos, and it's entitled "Politician Comes Out as Atheist to Reduce Stigma Against Non-Believers." It's a great piece to accompany the reading of that.
Yeah, that's great. Continuing on in this article, Jacoby writes, "The question is not why non-religious Americans vote for these candidates. There is no one on the ballot who full-throatedly endorses non-religious humanism, but why candidates themselves ignore the growing group of secular voters."
Do you think that Bernie Sanders, in fact, I don't know how early he was using the phrase spirituality. That was one of the first times I've heard him really use that phrase recently when asked about that. I almost wonder if that's a political calculation, because every time in the past that he's been asked about it, he says things like this. This is a quote. "I believe we're in this together, that we have to," basically things like we got to care for others.
Like the golden rule, right?
Like the golden rule type stuff. I mean, he's really talking about humanism. I mean, that's really what it is. So when he uses the phrase spirituality, I'm curious to know, because I have my own private thoughts about him and what his religious or non-religious beliefs may be.
It's true. I think in my case, I'll just reserve judgment because I'm a little bit tentative. I think that being in the community of secular people that I'm around a lot of the time, I think we're projecting ourselves onto him in a way that may not be fair. I honestly think it could be calculated. He could be like Barney Frank, who the minute he gets out of politics says, "Oh, I've been an atheist all along." That could very well happen. But if you're running for president of the United States, you have to talk about being religious or spiritual at some level.
But she's totally right. There's no one on the ballot who full-throatedly endorses non-religious humanism. And there's nobody out there who's made something saying, listen, you are a group of people in the United States that when we talk about religious freedom, you're just as valuable, right? That you are part of the calculus that's going through in between our ears whenever we're talking about religious liberty. And honestly, most of the people using the phrase religious liberty right now, that's not really part of their calculus.
We used to use these arguments as saying it's a growing number, you need to respect it, it's a growing number. Now, as Jacoby's writing here, it's a large enough number to be considered with any others. She writes, "Yes, America is still a predominantly Christian nation, but evangelical voters, including multiple Protestant denominations, at 25.4%, are the only group larger than those who don't belong to any church. At 22.8%, according to Pew, the unchurched make up a larger group than Catholics, any single Protestant denomination, and small minorities of Jews, Muslims, and Hindus."
Yes, if you put them all together,
this is a growing group.
This is a huge group. It's massive. It's ranging depending on how you define nuns or the unaffiliated, right? N-O-N-E-S for nuns. Depending on that, you're ranging between 1 out of every 10 and 1 out of every 5.
Yeah. Now I have to ask this though: when you think of secular people getting around and organizing and kind of joining up together and being groupish, doesn't the idea or the term herding cats come to mind?
Oh, yeah. It's a difficult group, but I don't think that they're all atheists, though. And I don't think that they're all atheists in the way that atheists are traditionally understood.
No, but do you think that that could be a reason why that's not as identified as a group is because traditionally other groups usually can form together and create their groups in a more unified way? I think secular groups and humanist groups are doing better at that now and are getting better at it and making that happen now. But I think they're playing from kind of behind the eight ball a little bit right now.
Oh, yes, especially in the halls of power, where the money and the power resides in this country. The idea of walking up there and saying anything remotely close to, I don't know if God exists, is just unheard of.
Sure. And I think politically, though, if you're looking at a group of people and you're trying to gauge them and you're trying to look for rhetoric that's going to engage them, it's hard when you have a group of people that traditionally don't join up in ideals. It's kind of something they take pride in breaking down a lot of times.
You know, and that's something that was actually brought up. She said, critics have suggested that there's no such entity as secular America, right? Because the non-religious do not share the same values. There's some force to that claim, but honestly, I'm kind of quasi-conservative, quasi-libertarian, and, you know, in a fuzzy world of my own here. And honestly, I feel very alone sometimes. I mean, it's kind of, I'm learning that there's more like me. But I've been to many events where there have been a lot of secular people, atheist individuals, agnostic-minded people, feminists and stuff, and the idea that we share a lot of political ideas and moral foundations, I'm not entirely sure that's the case. On the one hand, they are very different, and yet on the other hand, there's a lot of them that are very similar on the issue of lefty politics.
Absolutely, and I think there has to be this idea that if you're going to join in the group, you're going to have to start aligning yourself with a political group, and there's people that it rubs them the wrong way to think about them being entirely in one liberal faction. The same way I think about it like a union. A union has multiple political aspects to it. It's not just all Democrats that work at union jobs. And not all of those people are very spry and very geeked up about their money going to union political campaigns.
Going to Democrats.
Or going to Democratic campaigns through the union, right? And I think secularism's the same way. In a way, I think we can be a little hypocritical because we say things like not collecting baseball cards doesn't make you a baseball card collector. Like, not collecting baseball cards isn't a hobby. It's the same thing as if we're going to say there's a secularist group here, does that mean we have one unified doctrine that we all follow, or does that just mean it's a group of nons, which is not necessarily connected in many ways? But I also think there's a sacrificing of having to join up with groups that are religious in order to gain your political advantages, and that's what people have a problem with. This is what Jacoby writes in her article. Yet there is some controversy over a coalition building between those who consider themselves hard atheists and soft atheists. I suppose I must be a soft atheist for believing there is a huge political upside for ad hoc coalitions with liberal religious groups. So Jacoby says she sees benefit into it, but she does raise a good point. Some people will not see the benefit in it. There's going to be a line that's drawn there.
Oh, that would be a fun topic, Joe, because we have disagreements on this issue on coalition building with religious and non-religious groups.
Yeah, we do. We have a few disagreements.
When we get back, we're going to talk about Rand Paul's campaign, prove libertarianism and conservatism are antithetical. It's a piece by Tom Mullen over at the Huffington Post.
If you leave, you can't come back in. Paleo Radio will return.
Now back to Joe and Jeremiah.
We want to thank Ron R. on Twitter, his handle is Braces for Impact, for reaching out to us and saying, I always look forward every week to your show. Well done. Thank you, Ron. We really appreciate it. We love the support.
And it is well done every single time, I gotta say.
We definitely would have to think that, don't we?
We definitely have to do it. If you want to tweet out to us, if you love hearing these things and you want to hear whether your tweet will be mentioned on Paleo Radio, go to twitter.com/PaleoRadio Show.
Exactly.
All right. Now, this, I gotta say, speaking of Twitter, I tweeted this out and I posted it on Facebook on my own wall. I posted it on Paleo Radio's wall. Rand Paul has dropped out of the race. I mean, everyone listening to
shucks.
this probably knows this at this point.
Collective sigh.
Hey, I was bummed. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to lie. There's a part of me, there's a lot of things. I'm not an Austro-libertarian by any means or measure, but I am an anti-war voter.
Yeah.
I am an anti-violence voter. I take criminal justice very seriously. I take the drug war very seriously. These are things that to me are really important. And, and my personal autonomy, the idea that you don't have governments peeking in on your stuff.
For sure.
Right? That's a good idea. So on those fronts, he was a candidate that was putting those things out there, and trying to continue at least to get them out there. But there was a great piece, Joe, over at Huffington Post.
Yeah, I think we'll get into it in the piece, too. I think he caved on a lot of his anti-war rhetoric, and that's kind of what maybe led to his demise.
I think so, too. The piece here is called Rand Paul's Campaign Proved Libertarianism and Conservatism Are Antithetical. This is by Tom Mullen at Huffington Post. Google Rand Paul today, and you'll find stories about him suspending his presidential campaign under breaking news. In one way it is. In another it isn't. It's really an old story, but those who don't know history have been doomed again to repeat it. Since William F. Buckley started National Review in the 1950s, libertarianism has been viewed as a subset of conservatism. Reagan affirmed this view in the 1970s, before rising to the presidency, selling that same theory. But what caused Reagan to fail to shrink the government, by the way, it doubled in size during his presidency, is the same problem that doomed Rand Paul's presidential campaign. Libertarianism and conservatism are antithetical philosophies, and any attempt to combine them will fail.
Do you agree with that?
I'm not entirely sure of that.
I
know
think
a lot of fusionists. I'll throw a bone out to
Yeah.
Acton Institute here in Grand Rapids. Father Strico and all them, they're fusionists. That's a real school of thought. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you can be a political chemist with certain things. But I think in the case of libertarianism and conservatism, there is one thing that is just all and out different, and it's the idea of your own personal rights superseding the whole status quo. Like the tragedy of the commons, right? That's a real thing in libertarian culture that conservative culture doesn't have to deal with. Conservative culture acknowledges tragedy of the commons and says most people don't act in accordance with helping out other people if they can help themselves. So there's a lot of philosophies we've built around restricting that. And the libertarian philosophy is kind of open door policy on, hey, I think I can get more from it. I'm going to get more from it if I can dupe the other person.
And listen, I think there's a lot of reasons why Rand Paul did not do well this year. I think one thing is he came in being a senator not very long. I mean, that's one thing. For example, he came in a year where literally, and as we said earlier, Trump and Sanders won New Hampshire.
When he got
I'm
swept
sorry.
up,
You can't. This is definitely outside the norm.
he got swept up by the Trump tornado. Like, how can you be a guy trying to get some fringe votes and some more staunch conservative or staunch constitutionalist votes when you have a guy like Donald Trump who's just pulling all the attention over into one side?
If Trump wasn't there, the whole shtick with putting the tax code into the chopper. Did you see that where he threw it into the wood chipper? Tax code goes flying everywhere. I mean, he used a chainsaw and something.
Oh yeah,
I mean, he did all sorts of.
It's like Lindsey Graham beating his cell phone with a bat, like all that janky.
He did crazy
junk.
shenanigans. If it wasn't if it was not for Donald Trump, that it would be, in my opinion, it might be the Rand Paul show, at least for entertainment purposes, because he was doing stuff that was just way out there. I don't believe that conservatism and libertarianism are so antithetical that they're unable to be fused together by taking certain elements and trying to work those two things together.
Yeah, I think
fusionism is a real thing.
I think certain elements can make it together, but I don't think you're going to have conservatism and libertarianism. I think they can fuse to make something new, but can exist together side by side in one thing.
It doesn't play well in electoral politics where it's pretty partisan. Right, and where the partisan divide is divided equally into two. I mean, you kind of got your conservative nationalist versus establishment GOP, and you've got your progressive wing versus the establishment Democrat. So you've kind of got it like that. But so trying to pitch that narrative would be kind of it's a hard sell in that environment. It really, I mean, just legitimately, it just is. And with as many people as there were on stage, and I don't want to go into too much defending right Rand Paul and explaining away why he's out. But at the same time, I think those are reasonable considerations.
I think so, too.
Back to the article, it says, It's important to understand the philosophical differences here because they do indeed dictate political positions today. The crucial difference between libertarians and conservatives is this. True conservatives don't believe man keeps his natural rights when he enters society. Understood properly, they don't even believe they exist in nature at all. Both Hobbes and Burke said that man in the state of nature, quote, has a right to everything, even unto one another's bodies, added Hobbes. That puts them into a war of, quote, everyone against everyone. And according to Burke, in Reflections on the Revolution of France, government is to ensure the inclinations of men should frequently be thwarted, their will controlled, and their passions brought into subjection.
So this is kind of what I was just talking about, where conservatism says that they need to make rules because of the tragedy of the commons, the idea that this single individual will act in opposition to what the group consensus or the group need is.
Listen, there's many different kinds of conservatives. I didn't like when he said the true conservative.
Sure, yeah.
Right? I just kind of sat there and I thought, and he mentions, listen, he's familiar. He's written a book on this. This guy's a respectable intellectual on this matter. I was really impressed by it. But I said he's read The Conservative Mind by Russell Kirk, and he mentions it, in fact, in the article. But that has a litany of different thinkers and shades of conservatism and libertarianism over the years and how it's played itself out. So I just thought that was really interesting. But the details, I guess, you got it in the means here between the individual who might be for Hobbes with this kind of Leviathan thing, right? This absolute power centralized in a unitary sovereign. And he mentions in the article that you have intellectual people like Alexander Hamilton, people in history, great notables like Abraham Lincoln, George W. Bush, that they took a very strong central government position and yet still identified with conservatives.
Yes.
On the other side of this, you've got the Burkean idea, believe that power must be divided between branches of government, like king and parliament, and central and local governments. You have people like John Adams or Barry Goldwater. He mentions Ted Cruz. This would be true. I mean, he would believe in division of power.
I mean, in this case, he does believe in division of power. We can throw him that bone.
And so, I mean, but you've got to divide. Right? And you've got a divide that goes back a long way with notables all over the place. But he says, but whether you're a Hobbesian centralist or a Burkean constitutionalist, as long as you're a conservative, you part from libertarians in one very important area. You believe 100% of the power resides somewhere within the government.
Yes.
I'd like to hear him unpack that a little bit more.
I'd like to hear what he has to say about that, too.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of I don't want to say it's a vague statement, but it is kind of a general oversight that you'd have to get more in depth and explain where he thinks it lies.
I guess if it's a buck stops here thing, but I don't know if that's a 100% of power resides thing. I don't know. I guess it's
government's employer of last resort type argument.
Sure.
Not necessarily that the government is the employer.
Not saying he's wrong. I just like to hear him unpack it a little more. But right here, just as true conservatives see man's condition in the state of nature as a war, so too do they see the natural state of nations to one another, unless one nation dominates the rest. Now, this is, I would say, generally true of conservative people, that life is a war. All of it's a battle, and not only internally, the internal raging war that a lot of them believe in, but also the war of ideas, and why it's so easy to paint the other team as bad guys and the like, but also other nations at the same time.
Yeah, because foreign policy is a two-pronged system, right? The first layer is just generalizing it. The second layer is the assumption that people are always going to war and you need to have the biggest stick because it's inevitable that you're going to fight and you need to always be ready for that. And when you have that mentality, naturally your positions are going to be more defensive or more offensive or just more erratic.
But see, I would say this too. There's a lot of conservatives in history, wouldn't there be, who were anti-war?
Absolutely.
Or who were peace people. I mean, that would have been seen kind of as a conservative position, focusing more on the heartland kind of thing.
I also think we need to... It would be a good time to call out being careful about what we define as a conservative, the same way that if we say Christians do this or Christians do that. I mean, if we were going to talk about like Teddy Roosevelt conservative or we're talking George Bush conservative, they both are, but which one are we talking about, right? Which definition?
And I wrote in my notes, anti-war conservatives believe we're in a state of war hence the need for peace.
Exactly. Great
right?
point.
And so you would say, listen, yes, the state that we're in, naturally, just left as it is, there's a fight going on over resources. You got issues like scarcity. You got mortality. You've got a lot of things, family, a lot of things going into this. And the idea is, yes, that is the state, which means we have to be especially cautious and we have to be especially careful not to get involved in things we shouldn't get involved with and instead take a position in policy of peace.
Could it be fair to say that the current conservatives, their position is to think that they're preventing war from being all and out, breaking out throughout the world by doing these little, like, putting out fires here and there? The assumption is that they are actually preventing massive war, and that's why they take this offensive position?
I think it's an imperial kind of conservatism that says, you know, we have not only a reach but a responsibility to go into places all around the world for leadership. And you hear this a lot, especially during party time with the party machine rolling the way it is in elections. You hear this idea that we have to lead. Right? This idea that we have to be the ones. And I've heard compelling, passionate cases for it where they say, hey, if we don't, other nations look and somebody's got to stand up and say, I'm going to lead the charge. I mean, everybody's kind of waiting for somebody to do this in a lot of situations. And they're saying that's the way it's got to be. But not everybody buys that. And not everybody buys the idea that just because somebody's looking for us to do that or looking for someone else other than themselves, that means that we ought to be the ones to say, hey, just because we got a lot of money and power means we ought to be the ones leading the charge to put out every fire and destroy every monster.
I also think nationalism and propaganda play a role in it, where if you ask people in France who is the leader of the world and who has to make all the decisions for the world, I bet you they would assume it's French people. It's the governments of France. I mean, it's kind of built intrinsically into the system that you think your nation is the one doing all the work. Coming up next, Bill Maher, Quack Doctor. Lots of questions. We'll try to get some answers.
For debates, interviews, or speeches, contact PaleoRadio Show at gmail.com.
You love to hate 'em, you hate to love 'em. You just can't get enough of 'em, you sick freaks. Paleo Radio's on the air.
Sitting with my man here, Derek Bannister, my cousin. He's from the local 445 Electricians Union there in Battle Creek, Michigan, right? Representing the old creek. Yeah, and as you know, I was thinking, as the music was playing, I said, you know, there was a really awesome comment here over on iTunes. We got a 5-star rating from bass player Mikey.
It's good stuff.
It's awesome. He says this: the topics on this show are forever intriguing, and the hosts, Joe and Jeremiah, always have something interesting to say. They are great at looking at things in different perspectives, and it keeps me coming back for more.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, bass player. We appreciate it.
Loving it, buddy.
So, speaking of interesting topics, we're getting in on Bill Maher. He had an interesting guest a week ago, didn't he?
He did, and the internet went crazy.
The internet did go crazy, and you know what? Rightfully so.
Yeah, a little bit.
Rightfully so in some aspects, I would say.
I'm glad that we had a couple days actually between recording. People don't know this, the behind the scenes. This is, you know, kind of breaking the curtain here for everybody. You know, we record on Tuesdays, and then we come back on Thursdays and sometimes record. I'm glad we had those 2 days to really get updates on the story, insofar as it is, but to get those and kind of to round out where we're coming at with this.
Yeah, dig a little bit deeper into it. It gave us at least more time to figure out who Sam Chichoa is, and we're going to talk about him in great detail right now. This is an article from Gawker.com. It's by Rich Juzwiak, and it's entitled, Supposed Doctor Who Injected Himself with Charlie Sheen's HIV-Positive Blood Says, quote, I've cured countries. And this was on Bill Maher's show.
Yeah.
So last night on Real Time with Bill Maher, it featured a segment ultimately suggesting that if it smells like BS, it might be the milk of arthritic goats.
Right.
Maher hosted and seemed to take seriously Dr. Sam Chichoa, who famously injected himself with Charlie Sheen's blood while treating the HIV-positive actor in Mexico, as revealed on an episode of Dr. Oz that ran earlier this month. So Mr. Chichoa has been involved with Charlie Sheen, and yeah, he did kind of a stunt maybe, that he injected himself with Charlie Sheen's blood. That's open to
that's just wild
speculation as well. It's definitely not very professional.
Well, they were saying that it came from a lump. Was it a hematoma?
Yeah.
And they were saying that would have been old blood. There's at least a skeptical case to be made from that. And then Sheen came out and said, hey, I'm not even sure he did it in front of my face. I think he might have turned his back. It wasn't like he, took out some blood, popped it in his real fast, and bada boom, bada bing. It wasn't anything like that. But if he did it, it's crazy.
If he did it, but claiming it is quite a stretch. It's quite a feat.
Yeah.
Or it's quite a claim at least. So Chichoa is not licensed to practice medicine in the U.S. It's a fact that was glossed over by Maher, who repeatedly gave the, quote, doctor the benefit of the doubt as the beacon of hope in the fight against AIDS. Maher furthermore denigrated the usefulness of the antiretroviral drugs that are proven lifesavers to promote Chichoa's supposed miracle cure, which this is something that I think is probably the most important thing about the segment, is that Charlie Sheen has been given these antiretroviral drugs, and these are known to work. This is what I guess you'd call the Western medicine cure or the Western medicine treatment. But these are known to work to have people that are HIV positive maintain the life duration of an average person, which is an astounding feat.
Admittedly not very happily in some ways. I mean, Sheen was talking about how you can feel it.
Yeah.
He was saying sometimes you get migraines, you get poo-poo pants.
He was talking about his poo-poo pants.
That's the phrase he used.
Yeah.
We're not being mean to him. That's exactly what he said.
Yes. And so to go on the pun of the arthritic goat's milk, this is what Juzwiak continues on to say. Chichoa claims his cure comes from the CAEV virus, which he says is present in the milk of arthritic goats. Quote, this virus destroys HIV and protects people who drink it for life. Well, he didn't get into the exact science. What he's offering is a cure, not a therapy, which means that after Chichoa's services, Sheen should have been HIV-free. Sheen is not HIV negative, which means that Bill Maher should not be taking this quack seriously, much less giving him 10 minutes of airtime to spout his nonsense.
I know this is a little cynical, but I almost want to look into the connections Chichoa might have with the goat milk industry.
Yeah, he maybe is very, very heavily paid by the goat milk people.
It's a thing.
Cures AIDS.
Cures AIDS, right?
AIDS curing goat milk.
And that's how a lot of people in other countries end up buying a lot of that.
Now, when we got into this, I think that this is something that the article doesn't really get into, but most of these articles have been focused on the fact that Bill Maher should have never had him on there. It merits a response from Maher, and I think we're going to get one in a week, But I think the important thing is somebody coming onto your show, are you condoning their pitch? As in, like, Bill Maher has on Republicans, and he pitches their books. I doubt he ever reads them, and I doubt he thinks that they're good for America. But he does pitch the books of people who come on the show.
But he always has follow-ups. Especially if it's a controversial issue that he disagrees with.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one thing, and I went through. I apparently didn't get all of the questions because when we were going through the notes, we were asking, "What about the question about is he taking his meds again? Why isn't he taking his meds again?"
Yeah.
But to go through and look at all of the questions and kind of write out a transcript of it and say, did he ask any critical follow-ups other than the initial ones that he asked? And I don't know. After the first couple, I don't know how critical he was after that point, even after claims like "I've cured nations." I mean, that's a big claim.
Yeah.
So I'm not entirely.
Very big. That's a very big claim.
That's a huge one. That's not a small, minor detail.
It says in the article that Maher asked Chichoa, quote, if he says, as he did, that it was undetectable and that it stayed, then why did he go back on the traditional cocktail? That was what Maher had asked Chichoa.
Yeah, why did Sheen go back to the ordinary cocktail, right, that you would get in Western medicine? Why did he do that? And why did the country that he claims, what was the name of that country anyway? It was a pretty small.
I can't recall.
It was a pretty small little place there, and actually
Comoros,
right. The people of Comoros, according to Wikipedia, he claims to have eradicated HIV from the nation of Comoros in 2006. But as of 2012, the adult HIV prevalence in Comoros was 2.1% higher than the global prevalence of HIV in adults, which is at 0.8%.
So he arguably gave Comoros AIDS.
Well, why didn't they go back to his thing? I mean, are they still on it? And if they're not still on it, why didn't they go back to it? If it was like, dude, listen, what is that all about?
Do you think they didn't know what he was going to say? Like, do you think, I highly doubt that Chichoa came up there and said, by the way, I'm going to talk about Comoros.
I don't think they vet him very well. Because Comoros is part of his he doesn't have a very large Wikipedia page or any other kind of page, but that was on there.
That's on there.
I mean, and here's the other thing. We found this out. According to UN AIDS, the country director for Madagascar, Comoros, and others, it said, quote, I asked my country counterparts, and they replied that they've never heard about Sam Chachua. Neither have I. But maybe, maybe they're part of the conspiracy.
No.
I
think
don't know.
so.
That would have to be part of his narrative.
Well, and it would have to be part of Chachua's.
That's what I mean.
For sure.
Right.
And I think what I was asking, too, is even with Maher with follow-ups, I mean, even if he doesn't ask a follow-up, does that mean he's endorsing it?
No.
That's the question. For instance, if you have a bad interview with someone, does that mean ergo because it was bad you endorse them?
If it made it neutral, if not asking follow-ups resulted in it being a neutral thing, then an addition of praise or something that seems to be like people use the word fawning. I didn't like the word fawning, but I definitely thought it was more on the optimistic than the pessimistic about what.
Oh, it's definitely on that. Yeah, for sure.
On allowing it, even saying kind of following sentences that he would say with words like "right" after otherwise fantastical claims, but it was poetic. He was good at pitching himself.
We have to add too that Maher called what he said. He called it a magic potion. He asked him why he's the only person that knows this. And I think that this merits it, especially the fact that we're on a pre-recorded show that only lasts an hour and we go 15 minutes each segment. Maher's maximum interview time at those original interviews is a 10-minute window. He does 10 minutes, then he does 30 minutes of panel time, then he does 10 minutes of new rules, and then he's out the door. Right. And so I would liken it more to someone sitting down on David Letterman's chair and talking to him than Katie Couric having a deep interview with somebody.
Well, and I thought I lost the question having to do with it being back. The reason why is the same as everything else. Because the FDA is conspiring against him, which is part of his claim.
Yeah.
Universities are stealing, losing, corrupting samples, plagiarizing his work, which he said that they got their hands on his work. They plagiarized it, wrote it as their own, and then they buried that plagiarized work.
That's contradictory.
In a peer-reviewed journal. And then after that, they can keep pretending that they don't have a cure so that they continue to make money off of people dying.
And I think that, and here's the thing, I think...
laid out clearly.
Yeah, and I think that Bill Maher probably believes that they have more cures and that they put people to death sentences. I bet he does. I mean, I've watched a lot of Bill Maher stuff. I think he's a little shady in the area of medicine. He's a big medicine conspiracy theorist, and he also is with GMOs.
But I'm not an apologist for Big Pharma either. I mean, I believe I'm one of those institutional critics, those...
But do you believe that at Big Pharma, if they had the cure for cancer, would bury it?
No. I think they would make a lot of money.
I think you'd make way, way, way more money with a cure.
Right.
I do. I mean, maybe someone can argue with Matt and say, "Oh, well, you can have someone buy your treatment the whole time." Yeah, fair enough. I
think it's bad in the way not that they're hiding cures, but their involvement with insurance, right? Their involvement with lobbying and the kind of stuff that you see when you go into a doctor's office and they're completely surrounded with pens and with gear and seriously from all of these reps.
There was John Oliver nailed a whole segment on pharmaceutical reps. There are pharmaceutical reps where the doctor sits down with them and asks the pharmaceutical rep what's the best treatment for their patients. I've tried this, I've tried that, what else do you have? They're asking someone with a bachelor's degree in political science how to treat people with medicine. I mean, that's crazy.
It's complete Looney Tunes, bro.
It is, and I'll add just one more, but I mean, maybe this is to Maher's favor, because my belief is that Maher is a big pharma conspiracy theorist. Therefore, he's going to have someone like Sam Chachua on. I think that's how it worked out. But, if you were to believe that big pharma would withhold their cancer cure, you can believe that somebody's willing to take a pill that costs $13 and jack it up to over $700 for your AIDS treatment, because Martin Shkreli did that. That happened not even a month ago. Big Pharma, bro, the CEO, is in all this trouble for jacking up a pill to make $1 billion for his boardroom.
I wonder what Big Pharma's position is, if we can put it in a person, right? Kind of like Mr. Big or something, and say, Big Pharma, what was Big Pharma's take on Shkreli?
Oh, yeah. I think if you were caught, you'd be on the outs of it the same way. It's like Bernie Madoff. How did Wall Street treat Madoff? Poorly, because he was caught. How did they treat him beforehand? They loved him. He was great. And I think it's kind of the same thing. I truly believe there's pharmaceutical companies that make a gain in doing things like this, but I don't think that merits that they're holding cures for cancer and AIDS. I just don't. I don't buy what's being sold there.
If I agreed with somebody and they came on and pitched, and I agreed generally with an individual, but I disagreed with claims that they were making on the show, I'd still be critical.
I would still be skeptical, but at the same time, this won't affect me watching Bill Maher one bit.
Me neither, buddy.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what sucks, though. It's the music.
It's the music. It's the end of the show.
I love it and hate it at the same time.
Well, if you guys want to continue to hear Jeremiah, where are you going to be this weekend?
Dude, I am going to be speaking with my daughter, presenting God and Cancer, the Team Tiny Dancer story, at Harbor Universalist Unitarian Congregation in Muskegon, Michigan on February 14th. That's this weekend.
Yeah, don't miss that, folks. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook at Paleo Radio Show. It's been great, folks. We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Paleo Radio, exclusively with Secular Media Group.